Shalom, shalom. We're here again. And Abba, we praise thee. We thank thee for every single day that thou gives us. Every single day, every single breath is a gift that we much appreciate. Every trial and every triumph, Father, we give the glory to thee. We praise thee for love. We praise thee for unity. And we praise thee for healing. Behashem Yaosha. Amen.
Amen. So, just for the record, this is December 10th of 23. This whole thing of the retina blowing off, coming unhooked, flopping around, so they had to push the thing back. It's like, why does something like that happen? So I could sit here and say, gosh darn it, I was making good use of my eyes, or trying to. I was noticing that literally the day before this happened, I was noticing what excellent eyesight I had. So far away could see detail, close up see detail, could spend hours, 8 or 10 hours looking at the dictionary and writing and focusing. And my wife said, well, maybe you use your eyes too much. It's like, can you use up your eyes? Anyway, the point is, I don't know what happened, but there was no particular injury directly associated to it. But the question is, if this thing just flops off by its own accord, let's say, who's to say it should go back? So they do this surgery where they go in, and what apparently happens is that the back of the eyeball is called the sclera, and there's a fluid, vitreous aqueous fluid in the middle, like a jelly, and the retina is in between the two. So sometimes what happens is the jelly, being sticky, will kind of pull the retina loose or the retina comes loose. The jelly goes behind the retina and dislodges the connection. And it's like, well, why should it reattach? Well, they have to suck out the jelly and replace it with a gas bubble to push the retina back. But why should the retina attach? If it's like Velcro, it just automatically, gets in contact, but then why did it come loose? And I'm trying to see, is there something to learn? Is there something to experience that Yahweh has, this, like, despite the pain and expense and discomforting, is there something in this event to learn, to see, to realize, to appreciate? And, I know that he could just say, be healed, and you're healed. And how many fancy words do we have to say to one another other than Yahweh Rafka, Yahweh heal you? I mean, Yeshua at one time spit in the dirt and pasted mud on the guy's eye and told him to go wash. And why that routine, the rigmarole? Why not just eye see? Command your eye to see. Command your body to be fit. And so I've been trying to pursue this line of reasoning for the last week and a half here, 2 weeks, because before going in for the surgery, it was like, what do we have to say? What must I say, or what must I do in order to facilitate the healing afforded us, especially by his stripes we're healed in the crucifixion of Yahusha? I mean, that should cinch the deal, right? Besides Yahweh Raphi, Yahweh my healer. I mean, if that wasn't enough, it's like forever and ever, you betcha, and how. That extra boof, it's like, by his stripes I'm healed. If there was any question of my suitability to the offer, yeah, but you're a jerk. You've done this wrong and that wrong. It's like, hey, but he took it, right? So I'm trying to fit together the doctrine, the theology, the belief, the faith. Of course he can. Like the centurion. Hey, you don't even have to show up at my house. Just give the word. Send the message. Dispatch your messenger to heal my daughter, and it's done. And Yeshua said, whoa, I haven't even seen this kind of faith in my own people. And you, the enemy, the Roman occupier, you believe? Wow. It's like, what? we should be at least that believing, and put him to shame. We should have more belief than that. But, but what if it doesn't manifest? What do you mean, what if it doesn't manifest? That's not even part of the equation. The belief is, Yahweh's my healer. He has the power, the capacity, the will, the desire to speak the word, so speak the word. Well, then don't go to the doctor. Well, talk to a few friends about that, and the whole idea of going to get medical doctor, you could say assistants. It's like, yeah, I don't want to buy into the pharmakia thing. And it's, well, then I've been saying the last couple of weeks have been quite a juggling of these matters. I heard the thing I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, because we weren't here last week, mentioned this guy, Dr. Stephen Greer. The guy's into flying saucers and stuff, and that may not be somebody's flavor of their cup of tea. But regardless of that, somebody put together a montage of his talks, and he was talking about a related but distant matter. Just so you know, I'm not validating his subject matter, but I'm not invalidating it. I'm just addressing, using it as a metaphorical tether. He was saying that interstellar travel can't go the speed of light. That's too slow. It would take you 2,000 years to go across the Milky Way galaxy at the speed of light. And if you're going to go interstellar, intergalactic, so there's another dimension, because he's saying there's reason to, evidence that suggests there's reason to believe that there are spacecraft, let's say, or beings, and if whether there's or not doesn't matter. It's just a matter of subject to conversation, that they go faster than the speed of light. Well, how can you do that? The speed of light is a maximum registry, which is to say, how long is your tape measure? 25 feet. Well, what if you got a 27-foot board? Well, get a bigger tape measure. Or no, well, cut the board then. And it's like, for all practical applications, I found doing construction work for many years, 16-foot tape is better. Not many of them are longer than 16. If you're laying out a whole house, maybe, but most of the time, the 16-footer is real practical. So I've reduced my standard of measure to what I'm often using, because it's the first part of the tape measure that wears out. But what I'm saying is, where's the practical measure of reality? Well, a light year. Yeah, but that's impractical if you're looking at a bigger picture. It's like a 16 or 12-foot tape measure, or like one of those homeowners' 8-foot tape measures. You can't do construction with that. It won't work. Light years are too slow. Well, what does Yahweh use? If he only has us dealing with 6,000 years, or let's say 7 or 8,000 years, or even 50,000 years, if you look at this little thing called the progression of the equinoxes, which is to say that 12 constellations around the zodiac, the belt, the equator, which one shows up throughout the year, that's a 26,000 year clock face. So imagine Yahweh saying, here, I got you this great tape measure for you to use. Yeah, how long is it? 45 feet. Wow. But he only has us working on 6-inch pieces of wood. It's like, you don't want a 45-foot tape measure or one of those crank up 100-footers. Totally impractical. But why would then he put a clock worth 26,000 years and only have us use 6,000 years? Something's out of whack. And even if I don't have the solution, I recognize that something's out of whack. There's a riddle, there's a message there somewhere. Anyway, what this guy Stephen Greer was saying, because of this other consideration, there's got to be another dimension of communication faster than the speed of light. And the only way they can say it, if light is what we have as a unit of measure for time and space in the three-dimensional, or call it space-time, call it four-dimension. I think of time as being the fourth dimension, because on the fourth day, sun, moon, and stars were lit up. Third day, life was implemented, but the first 2 days, especially when he separated water from water, there's space. What was the first day when he said, let there be light? We'll address that. But the thing is, at least Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim vayet haaretz. Okay, so in the beginning, the way it's typically translated, created Elohim, Alef Tav, the heavens, and Alef Tav, the earth. Okay, then Veha'aretz hayata tohu vebohu, veruach Elohim merachefet al pnei tehom. That's what we talked about last week. So at this phase, the earth, the eretz, was tohu and bohu, tav hevav and bet hevav. Translated formless and void. Now, I've heard some people say, well, he had created an earth before that. Bad stuff happened. The devil came down, kicked it all apart, broke it up, whatever. And it's like, oh, gee, it's best. It's like, no, if it has any substance, it's not formless. So my thinking, just so you know where I'm going with all this, is that there isn't even an electromagnetic, what we would call plus and minus energy, electron proton. That doesn't even exist because that's a form. It's not void. But the word void, like the word chosek, alpene chosek, darkness. Well, the word chosek also means illiteracy, sin, unintelligible. Something's non-functioning. Okay, so it's not functioning, but there's a potential. That's the word chosek. But formless, tohu and bohu, formless and void, what does that really mean? So let's suggest that in Genesis 1, verse 2, there's not even an electron or proton. Then the word tehom can't be deep water because there's no water, because the water is hydrogen plus oxygen. Yeah, but it's not formless and void. Okay, well, there's water, but it's not hydrogen. No, oxygen and hydrogen are a fitting together. Hey, Mark, it's a fitting together. So there's nothing to fit together if it's formless and void. So this has to be before that. So if we say all those theories of how the universe was put together, all of them pre-existing Earth, just push all that aside for the minute. So what Mr. Greer is saying is that there seems like there's a demand to suggest that there's an interconnected communication dimension that's faster than the speed of light, that bridges expanse instantaneously. Well, it's the same thing I was talking about a few weeks ago with this idea of what's called quantum entanglement. And I said, well, you do something with this bit of water and then they register it thousands of miles away. What it is, I heard somebody else again mention it, that if you are spinning the rotation of, you might say, electrons in one volume of, let's say, water, and then you take some of the water and move it thousands of miles away, and they're still spinning the same because it's the same body of water. But then you reverse the spin of these electrons. These other ones, thousands of miles away, instantly reverse their spin. That's the quantum entanglement. That's the picture, the model of what it means by the quantum entanglement. And so what does that mean? There was no link. There was no physical object link connection. There was no light that was shining. What is that makes these two things connected? Well, that's where Dr. Stephen Greer was suggesting there's a dimension. They don't even know how to classify it or label it other than a dimension of consciousness, of thought. Well, that's the same thing I was talking about where Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Zavot, the Elohim of Israel, has a thought, a mind, a heart, a ruach. And if we synchronize with his thought, mind, heart, ruach, sympathetic resonance, which is to say the same thing, then boom, there's this instant connection. Now, then I saw this other video where a guy was talking similarly. I think he was an astrophysicist of some sort, but he was saying there's an ideal tone that's perfect. So we've talked numerous times about this idea called cymatics, C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S, cymatics. A fellow by the name of Chladni, C-H-L-A-D-N-I, hundreds of years ago did this thing where you take a tin, or even if you use the surface of water and you put a tone, or you put a violin string down the side of the tin with sand or salt on it, the vibrations at some pitch will be a perfect geometric structure. And then if you change the pitch higher or lower, it becomes disheveled, and then it'll find another perfect geometric structure. And so the interesting thing is, what number of hertz is that where the perfect geometric structures appear? Those are special things to regard, because where it's disarrayed, it's like, well, there's something out of whack. There's some dissonance or some perverted distortion compared to the pure tone of, oh, hey, look at that geometric structure. And so they've done these experiments, Chladni did, where you let's say you take the surface of the water, which is what they call cymatics, and then you put from a speaker, you just play sound, and then every once in a while, the water ripples on the water will form a perfect geometric pattern. And some of them are quite complex, almost like crop circles, you might say, something like that. But the idea is that then as you change the pitch, it changes that geometric structure. So you can go from low to high all through this whole scope of, or this range, and things change. And you go, well, there's got to be a pure tone by which everything is doing what it's supposed to do. Years ago, I heard that there was somebody, I think it was the 1920s, out on the farm in the middle of the country somewhere, where, say, a farmer has a straight axled cart and it goes down a ditch with a load on it and it bends the axle. And it's like, oh man, now what do we do? The thing won't roll. So they call this guy. And instead of coming in with, levers to bend and force this thing back, he'd come in with this little kit box with little hammers. What are you gonna do with that? And he ding, 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 ding. He starts tapping on this metal bar, and the vibrations in the metal bar, ding, 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 ding. He just keeps hitting the vibration, and the metal bar straightens itself out by itself. Why? It's the property of the metal. When they forged this axle, that metal wants to be there because that's where the way it is made. And when a force, a jarring accident bends it, it's like, I want to go back where I was. And so the guy, bing, 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 by hitting these little frequencies into the metal, that vibrating action is the energy necessary for the molecules to say, yeah, I want to be down here, I want to be down here. And it'll actually correct the bent metal. An incredible thought. And I mentioned that, I believe I mentioned back in the eriktology class of 2011. Well, I'm bringing it to bear now, saying that's the same idea with the retina. That's the same thing this astrophysicist was talking about. He was saying, regarding the human body or anything that's in disarray, that's out of sorts. It could be politics. It could be the economy. It could be the weather. It could be, why is my dog misbehaving? Some frequency is wrong. Because every piece of material existence, substance, whether it's a wood, rock, an animal, the sunshine, everything is frequency. Everything is just electrons and protons vibrating. The only difference between the elements is a different vibration, which allows them to have more or less electrons. Now, some physicists may say, shut up, this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm saying, in a general way to look at the creation of the world, the only thing that exists is a positive charge and a negative charge. That's it. Everything else is a manifest of the way those two charges relate to each other. A big difference, a higher, a bigger frequency, or a smaller frequency is the difference in color. Red light to blue light across the spectrum, you might say. White light is the combination of all the different frequencies. What about sound? A low sound, big, high sound, little frequency range, it's all just different frequencies. So if I was to make gold vibrate at a certain frequency, it's gold. But if I change the frequency, it's no longer gold, it's something else. An interesting thing I heard somebody mention this many years ago, and I just recently heard somebody else say, there's something called monatomic gold. It's a single atom. Gold, its own property is that it bonds to itself in two atoms. Gold is always these two atoms forming the element of gold. But there's monatomic, single atom gold, and it's not metal. It has no properties of a metal. It's a white powder. It's not even gold colored, but it's gold. It's AU. How can that be? What do you do with that stuff? They found it to have anti-gravity, you might say, effects. Yeah, but when and how? Why do they do this? How do they get this stuff? Well, they found this stuff, what I heard years ago, they found a bunch of this stuff in the monastery cave in Mount Sinai, of Sinai Peninsula, where Constantine's mother said the real Mount Sinai was. Of course, we now know it's Jabal al-Lawz in Saudi Arabia. That's a different matter. But how could they find this white powdered subatomic, monatomic gold in that monastery in Mount Sinai? But apparently the stuff is also found in South Africa. And apparently people called the Enki, or the rulers of Sumeria, were going down there to get it because they could do something with it. Well, what did they do? Well, they found that if you heat this gold up, this gold white powder I think somebody 7,000 or 2,000 degrees centigrade, 7,000 degrees, really, really hot. All of a sudden it disappeared. And they're going, what happened to this pile of the powder of gold? Well, it must have vaporized. It's gone. And while this dish that they're cooking this in is still blazing hot, they somehow clean it out and they, move something. No, there's nothing there. Okay. So they let the thing cool down and all of a sudden the pile of white dust reappears. And it's like, how can it reappear? Well, it went invisible. Yeah, but they just knocked things around. Well, it was in the same status as that it was before they made it disappear. So what that means is it went into another dimension. See, why I'm trying to say this is that scientific experiments, they notice stuff and then they see what happens and they realize there's got to be a rule that governs why that happens. And who made the rule? Yahweh Zavot. What rule? It's out of our experience. Well, he made other stuff that we don't experience. That's the interesting thing. And so for this pile of white powder to reappear after they've already moved in this dimension where it would have been and knocked it over had it been there, but just invisible, it wasn't just invisible, it went into another dimension. That's mind-blowing. It went into another dimension and came back when it cooled down. So the point is, if thought travels faster than the speed of light and takes us to this other dimension, and if Yahuwah built the elements to, in some cases, respond by going into another dimension, and there's no difference between monatomic gold and you or me, the stuff that makes our body, it's all just protons and electrons, then there's some way to affect everything with the same principles. It's just a matter we don't know. And so the point is, how do I get my retina to go back where it's supposed to be? Play the right note. Is it 528 hertz? Is it 714? What is it? What's the, not magic, but what is the prescribed, the allowed, the appointed frequency that Yahweh built into the system by which, if I attune myself, do I play it as ambient sound around me? Do I put on the headphones and listen to the binaural beats of that sound and the retina go boop back where it belongs? Why did it come off? Lack of hearing that sound. No, why did it come off and how do you get it to go back? So I've been contemplating these things the last couple of weeks. And it ties into everything we've been talking about for the last 20 years, actually. And it ties into the stuff. Why were those Knights Templar looking for the Holy Grail? What Holy Grail? The cup that Yahusha gave to his disciples to drink from at the Last Supper. Was there a grail? There was something. He said, drink this and pass it along. And it's like, what was that? So Da Vinci's famous painting, he's sitting there and the disciples are next to him, but there's no Holy Grail. And the whole movie of the Da Vinci Code is like, hey, it's the Apostle John. No, it was actually the Mary Magdalene sitting next to him. What? Well, she looks kind of feminine, but it's like, what? That's a whole nother run of thought, but that's what that movie was about. But the question is, wow, what benefits might be yours if you actually could take a swig of something, just whether it's just water even. If you could take a drink of something out of that Holy Grail, what would it do for you? What's the best case scenario in a human existence? Hey, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, let's say it did that for you. Got to find that grail. Or did he give us something else by which to gain healthy, wealthy, wise? What would that be? Did Yahweh Zavot give his people, you alone, Israel, have I made myself known to? You alone, Israel, have I revealed the truth to? You alone, Israel, have my promise, my attention, my heart, my spirit, my ruach. Well, there's got to then be something that he gave Israel. It's not this phantom Holy Grail. And it's not then me chasing down some other religion or other philosophy or other wisdom, woo-woo, not to slight it, but even like New Age or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever label you want to put on it. I shouldn't have to look any of those places to find what he gave Israel if he gave his best treasure to Israel. cryptic messaging here. You know, purple, segula, choice best peculiar treasure. Orange like a pumpkin is kufresh Alef. One of the meanings of kufresh Alef is to collect and harvest, to assemble, to learn how to read. Interesting that to learn how to read scripture, kufresh Alef. So kufresh Alef, noon, Quran, in Arabic, which is a cousin language to Hebrew, that's the thing you read. You put the noon at the end after read, learn to read, or assemble to learn to read. So Vayikra, the word translated Leviticus, means you guys have an appointed occasion to meet together and learn how to read the scripture. That's Kara, Kufresh Aleph. Yod Kufresh Aleph. Well, Aleph could be the suffix, and Yod Kufresh means precious, dear, costly, rare, like a treasure, like a segula. And something suddenly realized of great wealth that had not been appreciated as such before. It's like, whoa, learn how to read. I didn't know this was what was going on. Well, that's like the meaning of the word Erik, ayin resh kaf, meaning to appraise, assess, evaluate, to appropriate worth, put things in order and row and be able to look at it and go, wow, now I see what this is. I didn't see that before. Well, that's actually a synonym also with the word shemen, shin mem nun, which is the word for oil or the number 8. See, all these things are tied together with synonyms, meanings, spelling of words. Pumpkin, the color orange like a pumpkin. Having pumpkin pie with your meeting, get together. Sally was doing that. Anyway, that was, we were talking to her about, they were having pumpkin pie, and she goes, there's a Hebrew word about that. It's kufresh Aleph. Anyway, so that was from her. But the whole idea that Yahuwah gave us, I'm commanding you to get together, Leviticus 23, and learn how to read. And the one command for Sukkot is Ak Sameach, only, Aleph Kaf, only, this is yours, Aleph, from me to you, Kaf, suffix, rejoice, Sameach, Simcha, Shin Mem, or Samek, no, it's Shin Mem Chet, Sameach. Rejoice, get together and rejoice and learn how to read. That's the treasure. Or you become the treasure once you learn how to read. So if I could just find that one frequency, which tone is it that would put me back into that perfect cymatic geometric pattern where the retina wants to jump back and attach? Well, what the doctor, and I was talking to the doctor kind of something about this, and he says, well, the gas bubble they put in, you got to stare face down for a week and a half or 2 weeks or something. It's like, oh gosh, it's just tough on the back. My back was going in spasm and vertebrae going out of joint. But the point is, he says, well, the gas bubble isn't really pushing the retina onto the sclera. It's just holding it there so it doesn't flop loose. And there's no gel. We suck that out. So there's no gel to get behind the retina and push it away. But the retina wants to go back to the sclera. It really wants to. And if we don't do this operation in a timely way, it'll just kind of seal over. It'll heal. And then it's like Velcro that doesn't stick anymore. It won't stick. So you got to get it, but you just put it there and the retina's all like, oh, there's my, and it grabs back onto the sclera, that they want to be together. Well, wait a minute. That's a metaphor of like Israel getting banished because they didn't want Yahuwah. And he says, oh, you don't want me? You think you can find somebody better? Goodbye. Kicks Israel out of the land, chases them around the world with famine and sword and pestilence and grievous weather conditions. I mean, that's what he said he was going to do. Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, Ezekiel 37 or 36. Anyway, in Israel, Jeremiah 31, basically, Israel goes looking everywhere It's like, dang, I can't find a better God than Yahweh. Now I gotta confess my stupidity, my sin, my teenage rebellion, whatever you might call it, hormonal storms. I mean, he built us to be human, right? And it's like, so we got to go back and say, sorry, I've been stupid, and my ancestors were stupid for turning away, but I've come back. Come back. Here I am. What? Is Ephraim my favorite son, a delightful child, that whenever I think of him, my heart grows fonder and fonder? That's what Yahweh says. Once Ephraim comes to his senses, finds his bearing, and Ephraim says, bring me back, and I will come back. So then Yahweh draws Ephraim back, and Ephraim is running. Well, that's the picture of the prodigal son story. Prodigal son story is Jeremiah 31. Is your retina reattaching to the sclera? It wants to. Something got in the way and it fell off, and it's built to want to. Well, how do you encourage that? Well, the right frequency. What's the right frequency? What did he give us? What did he give us? Sound and light are the exact same thing. Light's just 40,000 times faster than sound. Same thing. Just wiggling vibration, resonance, frequency. Hey, that's that word in Genesis 1:2 called merechefet. Mem, resh, het, pei, tav. Merechefet. We talked about that last week. It was one of the last things I mentioned. Mem is the place or the object, the time, the tool, the occasion of it being now this thing. Resh, het. Well, resh vav het is ruach, spirit. Resh yod het is reek. Something smells, a fragrance, an aroma on the wind. Het pei is a hooded, a bonnet, a hat. The hood of your engine on your car. It's something which is covered, so it's secret, but it's also the tooth of a key. So if you had a key with a certain pattern of teeth that unlocks a lock, unlocks a secreted lock, that, call it there's a certain word. What is it? It's not priority. It's the word for a formula that you don't have to tell anybody else about, because it's your it's not priority. It's something like that. Anyway, the point is the pattern of teeth on the key is exclusively yours. Nobody else is allowed to use it. It's kind of like having a patent on it. Well, that's the Moedim. That's the Mishkan pattern. So this word merechefet, a secret key on this wind, reek, resh-het, which oscillates, vibrates, flutters over the face of the deep. Tehom, tav hevav mem. Well, that's the word deep, like deep water, but there's no water yet. Tav hevav, remember, that's formless, and water isn't formless. It's got hydrogen and oxygen, so deep can't be water. Deep has to be adding a mem to tohu. But mem is what? Well, mem is water. Well, there's no water yet, but mem is also a womb, a place of incubation. So this formless void is like a womb, a place of incubation, where the ruach goes to and starts wiggling or fluttering. Well, that's like string theory. We talked about that a few weeks ago. And then, that's verse 2. And then Yahuwah, Elohim says, Vayimer Elohim, Yehi or, Vayehi or. Let there be light, and there was light. That's the way it's translated. It suggests there's something else going on. But he at least said Yehi or. Well, Yod, Hey, Yod. Those are just two letters. It's the fifth letter, the Hey, and the 10th letter, the Yod. Why does that spell to exist? So Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, well, that's got a Vav. And so, said before, just so you know, any word with Yods, Heys, and Vavs in any arrangement is the verb to exist. And if you add an Alef or a Tav, that just doesn't change it. It still means to exist. But if there's an Alef at the beginning, it means I exist. Ehyeh, for example. Stick a Vav in there and it's Yahuwah he exists, or he made something exist, but it's the verb to exist. Why does it make something exist? That word, the utterance that he declared, Yahi, can't make anything happen unless it's given the power to make something happen. So back in the beginning, before the beginning of Genesis chapter 1, verses 1, 2, going into 3 now, verse 3, Yahi or, Yahuwah had to establish that if he spoke a sound that can be transcribed in letters, but maybe there was no letters at the time, but there certainly was a sound, Yahi, or Yahaya, because if the E is a yod and the Ya is a yod, why would they be different? Why aren't they the same? So why isn't the sound of the yod Ya, and the sound of the Hey Ha, then the sound of the yod should be Ya again, Yahaya, not Yahi. But when we say that the yod suffix sounds like E, it sounds like a vowel. Did it or not? I don't know. Dang, maybe if we could get this pronunciation right, that would be the frequency. Like the 528 or the whatever the number might be, that would cause the retina to go back. Because if he said Yahi or, and everything that was nothing became something, became at all, and by golly, there's got to be something powerful in that sound, that word. So if he was able to say Yaha, Yah, or Yahi, or he had to first invent the sound of what he was saying, which were able to be represented by what we call letters, and then later orthography of that sound of that letter, what it looks like if you draw it on paper, but there was no paper, there was no pencil, there's nobody to draw, no reason to draw, which is a communication, because he's just doing it first person present tense. There's no communication link he's trying to set up. But he's got to first invent the sounds and appropriate capability to what happens when he says that sound. And there's two sounds, there's ya, ha. And he had to determine that if he puts those two sounds together, it means it'll exist. What exists? Well, there's no corruption, so it's got to be perfection. Yaha, boom, everything in perfection, well, it's formless and void. So Yaha wasn't making the tohu and bohu become something else. The only thing that exists at that point that he could say Yaha to is the Ruach that's mirahefiting. Well, what's the Ruach? Spirit, mind. Spirit of what? Mind of what? There's no substance, and he's immaterial. So, see, but Ruach in the dictionary, say it also means expanse, like wind or volume, or open the window and get some air. The distance between this and that, from here to there, is a Ruach. It's not just the word spirit or mind or will or disposition, but it's all that too. So if you said, I have a certain mind, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's a singularity of something that can be identified. I thought he was a chad. A chad? What does that mean? One, unified. If there's one unified, there's no distinction. In fact, the people that study the Hebrew alphabet in a mystical way say that the letter Alef represents Elohim. Well, the word Elohim is spelled with the first letter of Alef. But what's Alef? Modern Hebrew, it's a straight line with a little line here and a little line there, and that's like that looks like the number Vav, the number 6, and this is two little Yod, so that's 26. So they'll say, well, that's Yod is 10, Hey is 5, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. There's another 5, and there's this Vav. Hey, that's 26. So if Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, the number value is 26, and the letter Aleph can be seen written in modern Hebrew as 26, and that's a special correlation proving that the Aleph represents Elohim, who is Yahuwah. That's what they say. Okay, that's a line of reasoning. Yeah, but who said what order the letters were? How can he associate that even Aleph is 1? There is no one. One means nothing until there's two, until there's an other. That's why the letter bet literally uses a prefix, means in, on, with, among, through, or against. It's because it's in reference to something else. In something, and then something's in something. On, here's something like a horse, and there's a rider on the horse. With, used by yourself, you're a chad. There is no other, unless there's another, in which case now you could be with or against. That's the significance of pondering Aleph compared to Bet. So if Elohim is a chad, there's no son of the Father. There's no Bet, so Ab can't even be Father. There's just his oneness. Everything complete, lacking nothing. So if it's lacking nothing, why should he make something else other? Because he's infinite. If he's infinite, there's no lack. There's no void. Well, then where did the void of Tehom come from in Genesis 1, verse 2? Now, somebody might say, shut up, that's Kabbalah. And it's like, what? I don't know nothing about that. But Avi ben Mordecai wrote a book, and he mentioned this word, and then somebody else says, dag nabbit. He was looking at Kabbalah stuff, and Avi ben Mordecai said, hey, listen, there's white Kabbalah and black Kabbalah. Well, come on, that's like white witch and black witch. They're still both witches. Shut up, leave it alone. It's like, I don't know about this stuff, but there's a concept that was called Zim Zum, and somebody else looked it up and said it was Sim Sum. Either way, it's SIMZSUM or ZIMZUM. What does that mean? That means there's a place which there's no other place, like everything's echad. And so all of a sudden, within that echadness, a vacuous, an empty space is created, like sticking a balloon into let's say, take an uninflated rubber balloon and stick it into a bucket of loose mud, say wet mud, and then put an air nozzle into the balloon, and so the balloon expands into the mud, and the mud being loose, it allows the balloon to expand. But now there's a void caused by the balloon inside what was just a solid bucket of mud. And then, now that there's this void inside what was just a solid bucket of mud, and the bucket's contained, and so now you can say, well, where's the volume of the mud? Well, yeah, but what if the bucket was infinite? There's not a bucket, it's an infinite expanse. Somehow this void was created inside the expanse of echadness. And then, now that it's void, something was stuck in. What stuck into that empty balloon? Well, you had to put air inside, like that's what they did with the retina. They sucked out the jelly, they stuck in a gas bubble so that it can make this volume. Same type of picture. Well, this Zimzum is that's the creation of the universe. Everything was echad. Everything was Elohim, lacking nothing. But Elohim decided to make a void, empty space, a Tehom, inside. And then what did he stick into it? His Ruach. And then wiggled, merachefeted, oscillated, his Ruach. You know, that strangely looks like putting a womb inside of a man. So he took Adam, the man Adam, knocked him out, put him to sleep, took his rib out, made a woman, which is a man with a womb man in English. What's a womb? You take the solid body and you stick like a deflated balloon, and it can be filled up as a place to harbor or gestate or incubate a little wiggling penetrator that goes in there and creates life, creates the universe. That's a picture of Zimzum, which is a picture of the letter Kuf, especially in Paleo. You've got the domed top, there's that balloon, and you've got the singular piece. That's the English or Latin letter Q. That's what that's a picture of. what's the difference in the electrons and the protons? Just one's a positive charge, one's a negative. That's kind of like an upswing and a downswing of a sine wave. That's the only difference. And the difference in elements is that one has more electrons than another, or more neutrons than another, balanced out the electrons. But that basically, it's either got one electron or two electrons or three electrons, and each electron that you add, you got a different element. What's an electron? Well, electron is a composition of something they call quarks. Oh, okay. Now we know what electron is. It's a bunch of quarks. Same problem. What's a quark? They came up with, I don't know, half a dozen different names of different things that are smaller and smaller, kind of like the Cat in the Hat comes back story with the smaller cats, each one with another hat inside of it, another cat with a hat, and Dr. Seuss. But finally, they say, well, it's all composed of a wiggling string of massless information. That's string theory. And some physicists will say, hogwash, there's no such thing as string theory. Somebody just made that, shut up and get out of here. Well, then what is it? Well, we don't know. Well, so it might be. No, it's not, but it might be if you don't have a better alternative. At least it's a place of reference that you can say no to or yes to or think about. Well, what is a massless string of information? Well, a string of information, that's a ruach. A ruach is an expanse of what? Of Yahweh's ideas, of his heart, of his consideration of himself. So if the ruach of Elohim is his mind, will, disposition, it's even the word courage, or hey, I'm going to do something, that's your ruach. This is my idea. This is my selfness, my self-identity. That's ruach. So whoever or whatever Yahweh determines to be of himself, because there is no other, for him to have an idea of his own being that he would then label, that's my Alef. But the idea in general, before he could even segment it down into Alef or something other, that's the word ruach. Or that's the thing that he could identify that he then labeled as ruach. Well, then, if it's only a certain length from here to there, and if you could segment it and say, well, it's about me, that's Alef, then where does it end? Tav. Well, then the ruach is between Alef and Tav. However big or small, ruach is the expanse between here and there. And if he says, I'm going to be this and not be that, but I thought he was a God. Well, he is. He's everything. Well, then how can you say not that? Then you have to put the void inside the hole, put the balloon inside the bucket of mud and say, it's only so big. I'm going to make myself able to do, known to be this, but not that. Okay, if he's a Chad, can he vary it? Can he, Chadness, infinite Chadness includes all variations, all permutations of the theme that are possible is the infinite Echad. But he says, no, I'm going to put a limiter. You're going to limit yourself. That's right. I'm never going to change. That's because who you are includes all possible changes. Yeah, but I'm never going to change. I'm going to present myself as myself, even though there's nobody to present myself to, and I'm never going to change what that is. So when we say Yahuwah is good, Yahuwah is great, Yahuwah is truth, Yahuwah is righteous, Yahuwah is chesedly, kind and compassionate, it's because he declared himself to be those things, and he ain't changing ever, no matter what. Even if we betray him, even if we act like stupid punks, rebellious teenagers, ignorant fools, criminal betrayers of his trust, he's never going to change. So when somebody else might say, oh, he changed this or that, it's like, no, that's not true. But see, that was the determining, so that is part of the ruach between Alef and Tav. And if he takes then his ruach between Alef and Tav, and he injects it into this, say, this balloon, this womb in the bucket of mud, in the echadness, and starts wiggling it, that's the word merachefeting. That's what he's doing right there in verse 2 of Genesis 1. Well, that's the same way that he makes the elements, a wiggling string of massless information in the Tehom. So string theory is identical with Genesis 1, verse 2. What's the virgin birth about? Miriam, said, I'll be your humble servant. Yes, you can use my womb. And he says, okay. So then the Holy Spirit, which is the female side of Yahweh, comes and flutters or hovers over Mary and impregnates her. Huh? What? How could the female side of Elohim impregnate Mary? Doesn't make any sense. Why not? Well, it's different than the model of what he gave us. You got male and female, not two females. How can the Ruach be the female? Makes no sense. It's like, see, you follow a logic and all of a sudden, what? Somebody thought Ruach ends in an H, ends in a H. Well, no, Ruach is Resh Vav Chet. Well, Chet's the 8th letter. In English, that's the letter H. So that's, hey, that's, sorry, doesn't work. See, you're talking to somebody who either knows some of the language, but not all the language, and they throw you astray and you believe what you hear and it's like, no, wait a minute, it doesn't work. Ruach is not the female side of Yahweh. It doesn't work that way. But the Ruach Elohim hovered or fluttered or overshadowed Mary. That's English words saying the same dang thing as Genesis 1, verse 2. It's the wiggling string of massless information which entered into Mary's womb. Hey, that's like a little sperm thing that caused Mary to conceive Yahusha as a virgin in the human perspective. Same thing as Genesis 1, same thing as string theory. If I looked at the head of the sperm thing like this triangle, that's like an Alef. And if I looked at the motor that drives the wiggling tail as this Nun, what's the word Alef Nun? Well, Alef Nun Yod is the word I am. Alef Nun is this self. Well, that's carrying the DNA. What's the DNA then? The massless string of information. But the wiggling tail, you see, Psalmic and Paleo is drawn as 3 horizontals and a vertical, but that's only one way it was drawn. Another way it was drawn is a zigzag with a line. That's a little faster. You don't have to pick the pen up and dip it in the carbon and it's a picture of a propeller. See, the modern Hebrew Psalmic is drawn as a circle, which is a propeller motion. So there's something about a shaft with a propeller drawn as the Paleo-Psalmic or the modern Psalmic, which is the letter Psalmic. So what if you were to write the tail, the wiggling tail of the sperm as the Psalmic? What does Alef Nun Psalmic mean? It means to force, compel, like to rape, or a violation. A violation, something is charging into boost to, well, that's the act of conception. Alef Nun Psalmic is what that little guy's doing, rushing in to find the egg and fertilize it, whether it's invited or not. So see this, the more you know the language and you look at things, it all builds the story, proving the reality, the treasure hidden here, proving the secret key that's hidden in learning how to read. My eyes can't focus on the time. How close are we to 1 hour? 52 minutes? So let's go back then to say, what is Yahweh, if he's got this Ruach, which is the plan, how he's going to identify or portray himself to everything else that he makes. Angels, humans, plants, animals, trees, planets, whoever, whatever he presents himself, this is me. Oh, who? Yeah. Who? See, we don't know how we got here. Neither does a fish or a rock know how it got there. If he gives it enough consciousness to go, hey, what do you know? I exist. Kind of like a baby being born. You know, something pokes it in the eye and it's like, Rrr! And then it has to learn, oh, that's my own hand. Hey, keep your fingers out of your own eye. Oh, okay, I can control that. Other things I can't control, but I can control certain things. Why am I here? How did I get here? What am I doing here? Well, did I just happen? Oof, what? Whoa, hey. What made that just happen? See, science has to look at all the possibilities and figure it out. But if Elohim says, hello, hello, you listening? I'm the one who put you there. Whoa, what? I hear a voice. Can I believe the voice? There's another voice. What? This voice contradicts this voice. Who do I believe? That's like Adam and Hua in the garden. Which one are you going to believe? Well, you have to be able to make a distinction in the voice. You were given the ability to perceive, to hear, to listen to voices, whether it's your own, whether it's somebody else's, and a conflicting voice. Are you equipped with the ability to discriminate, to notice difference? Well, then that was an equipping. Like if you were equipped with what it takes to be a tree or a rock or an animal or a human, you were given aptitudes. You were given things by which to then conduct your life affairs. And so if your life affairs include you as a human are going to hear different voices, whether it's your own or say the angel or the devil on your shoulder, the cricket or the lizard, and which voice are you going to believe? That's your job to figure that out. That's why you're here on earth, or your mission, should you accept it to get here, to be here, and here you are, you must have accepted the mission is determine which voice to hear and conduct your affairs accordingly. Okay? But there's something about, if you could just identify the voice print, if you could just identify the voice print as being the pure tone, perfect geometric shape, that's the Merechefeting Ruach frequency. Well, what would be the voice print of a deception? Something different, something distorted or perverted from that perfect ideal. It would have to look like the fuzziness in between the perfect geometry on a cymatic experiment. Well, if it was fuzzy and you're looking for pure, that's not going to deceive you or trick you unless you're just into that. But if you're going to bamboozle or betray somebody, and if that's the job of this Nachash, this Satan adversary trickster that we read about, that we know about, just to jump ahead to that, it's got to look pretty slick. And as a matter of fact, we're told, like, I think it's the book of Revelation, he says, boy, there's going to be a deception that's so smooth, so slick, so similar that if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. The very elect, who are they? Well, John Calvin of the Presbyterian Church, he had his idea of who the very elect were. In fact, just so you know, the Presbyterian view of the elect, such as I understand it, is, okay, Yahweh's going to make, say, 1 billion souls. And many do not find the way to life, as Yahusha said, but very few do find it. So let's say out of 1 billion, 1 million find the life, and 900 million, he's going to burn in hell. Well, gosh, how do you be one of those 1 million? Ha ha, nothing you can do about it. Only the elect are the 1 million that find it, and either he gave it to them or they can't find it because it's not up to them. What? That's right. He's going to make of 1 billion souls, and he's going to decide which 1 million get into heaven, and the other 900 million he's going to throw and burn in hell. And it's your own fault. My own fault? Yeah, he made it that way. What? That's the story. Believe it or not, well, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, because you're either the 1 million that are going to go to heaven or you're the 900 million that are going to burn in hell. Well, dang, what do I do about it? Nothing, just believe. Just believe, and then you can be, if you are the elect, one of those 100 million that get to go in to heaven. It's like, huh? Well, so it takes years to get this stuff pounded and drilled into your head to believe that story, and that's being a good Christian, such as I understood it and comprehended it and saw it on exhibition. And maybe I'm the failure to think of it that way, but that's what I gleaned or gathered for 50 years. Okay, that's the story. Because the Presbyterians are more correct than any other denomination, including the Orthodox or the Catholic or the JWs, or the Mormons, or the whoever's, or the SDAs, and it's like the Presbyterians are the ones. Or so they told us. Anyway, the point is, how do I know whether that's Yahuwah is a vote's pure tone frequency? They can claim it is, but how do I know it's not a shiny bamboozlement, a shimmering enchantment? Remember the word nachash? Yeah, the lizard, the serpent in the garden. Well, the word nachash is also copper. It also means enchanting. It also means shiny. Well, shininess is just a frequency, a vibration. So there's his pure tone frequency, and then there's another frequency which he designed to really gather, attract, to pull our attention to it, which is shiny, which is copper, which is witchcraft, which is sorcery, which is incantation. An incantation, enchanting, chanting. You see, a cantar in Spanish is singing. A cantor in synagogues sings. We've got the hour mark. We'll take a break. But what I'm saying is it's all about voice. It's all about music. It's all about grabbing attention either cymatically to the pure tone of Yahuwah's merechefeting ruach, or it's the deception. And either way, the human is designed to say, I just want to know the truth. It ain't so easy, man. You got to determine the truth. That's your job. Based on what? I have to take a break.